everyone, and welcome to today's session on self-service BI and data science. I'm Dave Menninger. I'm with Ventana Research, and I'm going to be moderating a panel today with several Domo customers, and we're going to go through some brief introductions. We'll ask each panelist to also then describe their business context of what they're trying to do. We'll talk about some of the challenges they faced, and we'll also talk about how they did what they did with their data science activities. So hopefully we'll have some time to get to some audience questions at the end, and then we'll continue from there. All right, so if you could all do a brief round of introductions, and we'll start with Hector.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for the invitation. My name is Hector Herrera. I work in the pharmaceutical industry since 2006 in different commercial roles, from marketing to business development and commercial excellence. Nowadays, I'm head of global commercial performance at Grunenthal. Grunenthal is a pharmaceutical company based in Aachen. Okay, we are leaders in pain, and we have presence in more than 28 countries with headquarters in Germany.
Thanks, Hector. Canio, can you introduce yourself and your company?
Sure. I'm Canio Caputo. I'm an independent business intelligence solution consultant that develops applications in marketing or for machine learning as well. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. I've implemented Domo in about 4 different customers' instances, and I can't say enough about the tool. I look forward to this discussion.
And Davis, can you introduce yourself and RXA?
Yeah, I'm Davis Plastide. I'm a senior data scientist at RXA. RXA is a great partner with Domo. We do a lot of Domo implementations, Domo work. I'm part of the data science team. So we do help customers use their data that's in Domo to build data science solutions.
And Jack, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Jack Clarity. I'm also a senior data scientist at RXA. So just to add to what Davis says, we're kind of a consulting firm that works across a number of different industries and a lot of Domo implementation work.
Great. So we'll stick with you, Jack. Why don't you tell us a little about the business context of what you were trying to do, why you were looking to apply, data science?
Yeah, so I was working with a car company, and what we ended up doing is we were looking across all of the dealerships. And the business problem was we needed a way to compare dealers to one another. The problem being is if you just compare dealers in an area, there might be a dealer that's twice the size of everyone else and just dominates all the stats. Oh, wow, they're always #1 in sales. But it's not really a useful comparison a lot of times because, again, there might be a mega dealership compared to, maybe mom and pop, smaller one. So our goal was to find a way to compare them using machine learning. So what we did is we did some cluster analysis to create what we call peer groups, which is, across the country, what dealers are similar to you, not only in the, volume of cars you push through, but also in the demographics and the, population of the area that you're in. So now we can compare 2 different dealers that are on different sides of the country, but they should generally perform similarly.
Great. Hector, can you give us some business background on what your organization was trying to do?
Yeah, we are coming from a different angle. As I say, we are in the pharma industry. So a couple of years ago, we started moving towards a customer experience omnichannel approach. So for us, it was very important to understand which activities were creating a better customer experience. So we needed to understand exactly what was the deeper end of the different kind of interactions that we can do. Okay, we have to keep in mind that the pharmaceutical industry is quite peculiar because we have the one customer, which is the patient, which at the end is using the product, but we have the physician who is actually deciding what to use. And in many cases, we have a different one who is actually paying. So that creates a lot of complexity on the different level of data that you need to work with. And the challenge is exactly how you put this together in order to understand what is generating or what is creating better customer experience. Okay.
Great. Davis, can you give us some background on your business situation?
Yeah. So I was working with a financial institution to help them use their marketing data that they had in Domo to provide insights using multi-touch attribution models. For those unfamiliar with multi-touch attribution, it's basically a very common approach in marketing optimization that looks at all the different touch points that a customer might have along their journey, including interaction with paid media up until like a conversion event. So these models allow you to designate a certain amount of credit to each of those touch points, which is very important for people in marketing so they can understand which channels to optimize and which ones may not be as important.
Where to spend the money, right? That's the key. And Kanyo, how about your business situation and context?
Sure. So most recently, what we developed was a machine learning model using random forests that would look at the attributes of our leads, determine which were the most powerful, and result that drove down the cost per lead and drove up the clicks and impressions. And then we could determine sort of reverse engineer what we thought was a good lead, a good quality lead, and then take that one step further by automating it and constantly training the model. But I make that sound like it was something that we just turned on, but this was 2 years of effort of getting all the data points in to Salesforce, which was the tool that we banked Domo up against, and then used Domo to build out this model that bridges over into the SEM, SEO, ad campaigns, and then structures that data together.
Great, thanks.
Where to spend the money? I'm sorry, where to spend the money also.
Yeah. It's interesting. There are lots of business opportunities to apply data science and machine learning. And one of the things we find in our research is that, AI and ML has not penetrated organizations as much as we think it should. Those who have invested in AI and ML, nearly all are investing more. Everybody is investing at least as much and potentially more. Nobody is investing less. But we find the penetration rates aren't as much as we would expect. Only about a quarter of organizations have AI and ML in production. And I think some of the reason that there's some challenges, and so maybe we could get each of you to talk about some of the challenges that you guys faced. We'll switch around. Kanya, we'll stick with you. You started to allude to some of the challenges getting data into Salesforce and out of Salesforce. So maybe can you talk about what some of the challenges were that you faced?
Sure. There's a couple, but one of the things that I always like to say is you have to get an organization to become predictive. You can't just drop it in. So we moved from, I like to say, reactive, which is looking at something and then making an analysis on it, to proactive, to predictive. And as you start to realize the data points that you need to answer the questions, then you start to backfill that data into a master data management program. I like to follow a center of excellence, sort of what IBM does. And you can do that for any organization, big or small. It doesn't really matter. The next pain point that I have is my background is as a DBA. I did SQL, I've done SSIS, I've done ETL, I've done all these things, and I've worked in retail banking, so I have risk modeling experience. So in order to, in my opinion, develop some of these things, we have data scientists on this panel. I didn't have a data scientist. I had a guy, Matt Licata, and he has a master's degree from University of Delaware, but it wasn't in statistics. So I needed somebody that had visualization ability and a similar background to me, and then we could work together to understand the needs of the customer, and then develop, iterate. And we actually, lastly, I'll say, we use a software development lifecycle methodology with Agile and change management. And I really think that is also the key, because as the customers say it, they're always going to have new questions. And you have to keep up with that.
Okay. Davis, what were some of the challenges you guys faced?
Yeah, the majority of our challenges was about the data. Luckily, we had a very good data set, very, for lack of a better word, like clean data. But I don't want to say, unfortunately, this is a good thing, but we had a lot of data. There was a lot of data that we had to load into our models to create these multi-touch attribution models. And it's important to keep every row when we're building customer journeys. With some data science use cases, you can sample your data. That doesn't work as well with multi-touch attribution because we want to understand the full customer journey from their media interactions to a conversion. So when we track every single interaction, including page views and button clicks on, on web pages, that becomes pretty big once we start to, multiply out by millions of customers over several years. So big data is a good thing, but sometimes it can be tricky to deal with.
Yeah, you highlight a couple of the challenges we see in our research. Big data is certainly one of them. In fact, it's the top in the list of challenges that organizations face. And the other is, the process of preparing the data, making the data accessible. You both, Canio, and you have mentioned that. Hector, what were some of the challenges you faced?
Well, I think at the end, exactly, is we have some commonalities, even if we are talking about different industries or businesses, no? Because the first one was, again, breaking the silos about the information and the data. Okay, so just not only having the data clean and validated, but also having more data coming into the common source, okay, or the common platform. Then there is a second one about building the processes. So how do you want to understand what is driving performance? Okay, so you need to build models, you need to get the trust of the team. Okay, and the third one I would say is around the change. Okay, so Kanye was also mentioning about how to involve the different people in the business. And we need to have in mind exactly that we will have the analytical team, we will have the data science, which is not necessarily the analytical team, and we have the business people. Okay, so we need to make them feel comfortable and making a connection between the traditional way of looking at the business based on the indicator, looking at the past, and then gut feeling to see what you do moving forward. And now we're using models to understand what actually is generating impact or creating value, and even do predictions and modeling, again, to see what do you do in the future. So again, I see a lot of commonalities, and the beauty is moving from a traditional way to a new way of looking at the business.
And Jack, how about your scenario? What kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think across all the science projects, all these challenges that my colleagues have mentioned come up, but specific in this case, that kind of was a big learning curve for me was I feel like a lot of times there is, the data science group or, someone who's building the models. And then there's the kind of business group that might be using the models or the business case for the use of the model. And marrying those two has to happen for you to have a successful model. And a lot of times, I think coming from the data science world, it's like, okay, well, then my goal is to convince everyone else that they should be using this model. Like, I'm going to build the best model and then prove it, and then everyone will come and be, on board with it because it's the best model. But in this case, one of the big learnings I had is like, well, what can I do as a data scientist to start to bridge the gap? So like meet somewhere in the middle. So in this case, we actually kind of we looked at the mathematically the best model, but it was impossible to understand. And if we sent it to the business, they'd be like, okay, like we don't understand this, we don't trust it, we're done. It's like, okay, how can we maybe take a step down from that, still perform a great model, not the perfect model, and then get the business more involved and help them understand. And so kind of meeting in the middle there is something that is really valuable and something that us data scientists also need to learn to do, not just pull the business to us.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was surprised nobody mentioned what I would broadly categorize that as trust, right? You got to build trust in the output of the models. And so I'm glad you brought that up. Can you talk, you started talking a little bit about how you did what you did. Can you talk more about how you did it and what the role of Domo was in the process, Jack?
Yeah, so the one of the struggles in cluster analysis is that, and doing cluster models is there's no right answer. You're saying these are similar, and the math tells me that these are similar, and that's it. So kind of one, validating your results is much harder, and two, getting that buy-in. So what we did is we talked to the business group, said, hey, what are the two most important features that you are looking at or you would expect to be similar when we have a peer group? And the two that came up were sales and population in the area. So we decided like, hey, let's take that and let's split all of our data, because we had 3,000 different dealers that we were looking at. Like, let's split everyone, rank them high, medium, and low in sales, high, medium, and low in the population in the area. And then those formed what we called super groups, which is, a subset of, instead of 3,000, now we're looking at a few hundred in these 9 groups. And then we did our cluster analysis in there. So that allowed us to have very kind of clear naming conventions in terms of like, okay, this dealer is in this peer group because they had high sales, high population, and then we let the computer decide, and it grouped it with this group that had high competitors. And where Domo came in is the visualizations throughout this whole process. That was where it became the most valuable to me, because I could really easily kind of show all these on a like graph and like a scatter plot. Or at the very end, we had a bunch of visualizations where someone could go through and select an individual peer group, see how their stats matched up to like the averages, to get to understand, oh, this peer group is in this, it is a little bit lower in competition than the average and higher in sales. So that really helped get that buy-in from the business side, so they could understand like, okay, this peer group is in, or this customer's in, or this dealer's in this peer group for this reason.
Great. Tanya, can you tell us a little about, how you did what you did and the role of Domo?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned is Domo is, when Domo got sold to me, I had this vision because I'm a visual person, but what they sort of sell you and what Domo is capable of are almost 2 different things, because the solution architects that are selling you the product sometimes don't understand what you need. They try their use case as much as they can, but what Domo does, to me, is it's as sophisticated as you need it to be or as simple as you need it to be. One of the approaches that I took is, I will, hands up, I'll say my son loves Fortnite, and boy, how that kid can move around in his game. And I thought, I want to do something, because younger people and other people see these visualizations, and we're on our computers and everything all day. And I really wanted to push things into a gamification mode of the dashboard. Jack was talking about how, getting the users to buy in. Domo, what they've done recently with allowing you to drop in variables, they've made their dashboards so incredibly powerful and so easy to build, even if you don't know what you're doing, that the tools that people see, they automatically gravitate to it and go, wow, what can I do with this? And so getting that buy-in, that the data behind it is right, is important. Using sliders, using different ways of showing the audience, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I think your data points to, and then answering as many questions as you can in that one single pane. That's always been, I would say, difficult for users of Power BI and Tableau and all these other things. You're answering all these questions across multiple data sets and dashboards. Domo just gives you that unique single pane that if somebody has a little bit of creativity in their brain, it's going to allow you to do it. And the resources are obviously off the charts. So I just pushed users out that way to that self-service BI. But there always has to be somebody that really understands Domo and can answer those questions and has the time to develop. I hope that answers your question.
Davis, before we get to you, I'm just going to remind the audience, feel free to put questions in the chat. We'd like to take some of your questions toward the end of the session. Davis, can you tell us a little about, how you did what you did and what role Domo played?
Yeah. So we definitely used a lot of Domo's capabilities of visualizations. But if I can, just would like to plug Domo's integration of Jupyter Workspaces. That's where we did all our work for reading in this data. The MTA, the multi-touch attribution modeling that we were doing, some of it is simple, such as like first touch and last touch, grabbing the first touch point a customer might face. That can be done pretty easily in SQL, but more complicated ones require a kind of a higher level programming language like Python or R, which you can do in the Jupyter Workspaces that's integrated tightly with Domo. So short answer, Jupyter Workspaces is how we did it. I can get into more of the technical details, specifically like reading in the data set concurrently allowed us to read the large data sets in a timely manner for developing and also for running these models in production, they have to be running at in a reasonable amount of time to be useful to the the downstream data sets that power the dashboards. Yeah, that's in a nutshell how we got that data set handled.
Okay, great. And Hector, I know you're more from the business side of the organization. So, what can you tell us about, how the work was done? And maybe you can also bring us a little bit closer to the business side. How did that get, involved, into the hands of the business users?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we did it. We started with pilots, right? So we needed to understand a proof of concept, or to build a proof of concept again to get the buy-in. And then we did it again to falls. One around how quickly we were able to actually build dashboard. But the beauty of the thing was at the end about showing the potential of using advanced analytics. Okay. So we did that also taking or leveraging on the consultants team from Domo. Okay. So while we were building the capabilities internally, we were already also putting in traction the different processes that I was mentioning before. Okay, so we started again building the machine as we were working, and this allowed us again to get the traction from the executives and the analytical team. Okay, and I think again there is a kind of virtuous circle. Okay, because the most trust that you get from the organization, the more data that you get, and then the richer the analysis that you can do, and also the advanced analytics. Okay, so we take it again thinking on the different users that we have. That it can go from the visualization part. If we talk to colleagues in another areas, maybe they are just looking for ratios. So it depends on who we were going to talk to. We also were looking for those business questions in order to answer them and then they get buy-in from the organization.
Okay. So let's change directions a little bit and talk about the skills that are required. So our research shows that 2/3 of organizations don't have the AI and ML skills that they need. So can you each talk about, where the skills came from and how you acquired those skills, and even maybe what your plans are? You're going to continue doing it that way. So did you have data scientists on staff? Did you hire some? Did you use outside resources? And I think I know a little bit about the answers we're going to get from RXA. So why don't we start with you, Kanyo?
Great. Well, we didn't have data scientists at the last place, and actually, I'm not a data scientist. I just took some courses at the University of Delaware and learned how to build out the models. And I have a history of data analysis. We brought in, as I said, we brought in my guy who had more statistical background than I did, and we were able to build out the models using his background. My background, as I said, DBA, SQL, with an understanding of statistics and how models work and the buttons that you have to press to make sure that the model is significant. But one of the things, I know this is a data science panel, but as I said, Domo is as sophisticated as you need it to be. You can hook in Python and Panda and run everything through, and then you have your models and visualizations. But you don't have to go to that degree to get answers that you need. So you really, if you're cost prohibitive to bring in a data scientist, a DBA, somebody that knows reporting, somebody that's done Salesforce work in the background. I know I've leaned on that a little bit, but those two things seem to overlap. And so a person that SSIS or understands ETL, those are really the strong qualities. And then if they like to tinker and they're a visual learner, then hats off to them. Domo is, again, they can go so many different directions. And lastly, I will say is you got to give people time to explore the tool. They have to understand the tool. Domo is constantly innovating. Like I said, they're probably going to have something released today. So you have to give people the ability to get in there and see what that stuff can do for your customers.
Okay. Hector, what did your organization do? Did you have data scientists? Did you contract for resources? How'd you handle it?
We do both. Okay. So as I say, we started with the support actually from Domo. Okay, as we were building the data science team per se. Okay, so now we have a data science teams in place. We are also getting the knowledge transfer, and we are running models inside, okay, the organization, but also depending on the demand or the complexity, or as David was looking for different models or different approach, we also go to third parties to complement the capabilities that we need today.
Mm-hmm. And Davis and Jack, I'm assuming RxA has data science skills. You've talked about some of the things that you guys did. Davis, can you talk about how you work with clients? You know, is there a transfer of knowledge, or do they hire people when they're working with you to take on, you know, the work later? What's that skill process, you know, in your client organizations? Do they continue to work with you, or do they bring on their own resources?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on each client. There are organizations we work with that do have a robust data science team that we help, you know, implement solutions, and, you know, knowledge transfer there is very easy if they have those resources already. And there obviously are cases where we do continued work for those who don't have a team, but we often do, for the clients who are kind of in between, after we implement a solution, do a little bit of training to give them, you know, the basic fundamentals they need to keep this solution up and going, and obviously the, you know, knowledge you need to interpret the results so that, you know, it's not just random numbers on a page. They can look at these and know what this means, and this is how it's useful.
Yep. So we got a question from the audience about whether it's better to develop models, you know, outside of Domo and bring them in, or develop them within Domo. And Kanyo, you were offering some comments in the chat. You want to respond to that, and then maybe we'll get Jack to chime in as well.
Yeah, sure. Somebody interrupt me because I don't want to take up all the time. But we ran our stuff off on our own machines. We had Python. We ran Python through our through scripting, and then we had a GitHub repository, all that stuff, and then we pushed it in. And then we also took that data, that lead scoring data. Domo has a write-back connector into Salesforce, and then we would push that lead scoring data right into a Salesforce list, or we could put it right onto the Salesforce lead page layouts or an opportunity or whatever. So you don't need Salesforce's lead scoring either. And once the data is in Domo, it renders and it moves so quick, but it really does kind of depend on how many millions and millions of rows you have. But again, in the bunch of times that I've done with Domo, I've never really had that issue of speed. I mean, if you're billions of rows, you may, but you're going to encompass that anywhere. And then people move that to Snowflake. That's all.
Jack, what's your perspective on developing outside and bringing the model in, or doing the modeling within Domo?
Yeah, I'm going to give the classic data scientist answer of it depends. So it really is use case by use case, right? It's how much speed you want, and that's when you have to work with your data scientists and your team and the business to figure out, like, okay, what cadence are we scoring? How many customers or not customers, but how many fields are we scoring at the same time? I would always love to have everything all in one place, and that's why, like Davis said, having the Jupyter notebook integration is great. But it you know, if there's certain packages you need, or certain, you know, other potentially it could be an organization level of, like, oh yeah, we can't send specific data, we'll have to score and then send our scores. So it really, you have to spend time in your, you know, product management kind of to at least devote one, you know, good session with everyone who's involved, like, okay, what can we do? What would be the best solution? And then what is the most, you know, possible solution, or what roadblocks we have. So
great. Well, we'll go around the horn once more before we wrap up. Just 20, 30 seconds on what people should do to get started. Hector, any advice for people getting started?
Get started, because you are going to learn across the move. Okay, so the perfect timing is like in life. If you start thinking about the perfect timing, maybe never comes. So you need to make the decision and start moving. Okay.
Yep. Davis?
I'd say get your data ready. Data readiness is the biggest roadblock often with data science implementation. So if you know what your data looks like and understand your data, and it's clean and prepared, that is honestly the first step oftentimes.
Okay. Kanyo, advice for people getting started? You're on mute.
Wouldn't be a meeting if we didn't do that. Don't be afraid to jump in, save your data sets, and you don't really have to worry about saving your work. You can always go back and get back to another version. Domo has great version control for us DBAs that delete stuff and make mistakes. So
Jack,
tear it
how
up,
about you?
don't be afraid.
Thanks, Kanyo.
Yeah, I'll build off Davis's. Is even if you know your data is not ready, start to think about data science, because your data engineering will eventually, if you build the modeling, you need to have your data engineering kind of start to build towards that. So it's like the begin with the end in mind.
Okay, great. Well, I see our time is up. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I want to thank all the panelists for your participation and sharing your insights. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye-bye. Thank you.